Good afternoon. My name is Amber Jones. I am a financial analyst for the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry is a large and complex global sector, includes the exploration, extraction, refining, transportation, and marketing of petroleum products. These products are vital to the global economy as oil and gas are used to generate electricity, power vehicles, heat homes and buildings, and produce a wide variety of materials including plastic, fertilizer, and pharmaceuticals. Things we are going to discuss in the oil and gas industry is the financial health, which refers to the overall ability to meet its financial obligations and generate profit. It also assesses a company's stability and potential for future success. Some key aspects to a company's financial health are profitability, company's ability to generate profit, liquidity, company's ability to meet short-term obligations, a company's need to have cash or easily convertible assets to handle these short-term needs. Solvency is a key aspect. It's a company's ability to meet its long-term financial obligations, such as debt repayment. And lastly, the last key aspect is efficiency, which is how well a company manages its resources to generate revenue. So, to find out how these companies will do in the future and how they're doing now, we will use the horizontal analyst method, which compares financial data across different periods, usually years, also known as a trend analysis. This is a snapshot into a company's revenue, expenses, and assets. So where do the numbers come from? The numbers come from the balance sheet, which has the assets, liabilities, and equity. So with the assets, we will do the current and non-current. Another thing we will need is an income statement, which shows the revenue, the expenses, and net income. And with the expenses, we will find out the operating expense and the selling and admin. We are going to discuss 7 of the oil and gas industry companies in no particular order. I'm going to do Phillips 66, Schlumberger, Tetra Tech, Shell, Chevron, BP, and Kinder Morgan. So, to start off with Phillips 66, their income statement, the revenue and net income declined after the first year and expenses stayed the same throughout the first year. And for the first 3 years, operating expenses and selling and admin expenses did not change and were equal until after year 4. After year 4, oil and operating expenses decreased, which is a plus for the company. So during the first year, second and third year, they did not change much when it came to non-current and current assets, which is not bad or good, but you would want to be increasing your number of assets because in the long run that can save you from debt. Another thing on here is equity and liabilities. So we will do the current and non-current liabilities and the equity. So in the first 2 years, all were really non-changing. There was really no effect until the 5th year. And during the 5th year, equity increased, which in our terms means we were making more money. We were getting more assets, which is a plus for the company. So next we have is Schlumberger. And for their balance sheet, the non-current asset decreased by 5% in the first and second year. And then the current assets increased after the first year and stayed consistent with a little growth over the last 4 years. So with assets, we want them to be growing yearly, and with the stagnant they weren't really gaining anything until after the fourth year is when they started seeing an increase in assets. The equity decreased a mere 5% in 5 years, and current liabilities did not change, and non-current liabilities increased by 15% over the 5 years. The last thing a company wants is for the equity to decrease, which means that their assets had to decrease, which in the end is not good for them, because in the long run, you may need that money for if something happens, because COVID has happened and the last 4 years of this, and I'm sure that is what had an effect on Schlumberger's equity could decrease. And on the income statement, their revenue and net income declined after the first year. Expenses stayed the same throughout the 5 years. So I expect the revenue and net income to decline after the first year, because after the first year, that was 2020, and we were in a whole shutdown. People weren't traveling as much by car, so the oil and gas profits did drop during those COVID years. Tetra Tech's non-current assets decreased drastically over the 5 years. Current assets increased rapidly over the 5 years. So they were about 50-50, which for them is good. The company's equity stayed the same throughout the years, and non-current liabilities drastically decreased and current liabilities increased, which is not good for them, because you want your liabilities to decrease over time and not increase. Increasing means you are obtaining more debt. And on their income statement, over the 5 years, revenue declined drastically out of all 7 companies. Expenses stayed the same with no increase or decrease in the 5 years. The net income was at a low until year 3, and things for Shell's balance sheet, over the 5 years, non-current assets decreased more than 50%, and current assets increasing. You always want your current assets increasing, which means you have more money for more problems. Equity decreased by a little. The non-current liabilities doubled, and current liabilities showed little change. You want your liabilities to always be decreasing. And the income statement shows that revenue and expenses declined all 5 years, along with net income. This could have happened because of changes in the company, new competitors, or COVID. Operating expenses declined all 5 years, and selling and admin increased over time. On the income statement, over the 5 years, non-current assets increased by a little and current assets decreased slightly. Equity stayed the same until the 5th year, where it decreased more than 50%, which is not good. They are losing money. Non-current liabilities increased significantly, and current liabilities increased in the 5th year. Revenue declined over 5 years. Expenses declined drastically. This is positive for the company. Net income declined, meaning that they weren't making money, they are losing it. BP is next. BP's balance sheet, over the 5 years, non-current assets decreased and current assets increased. Equity declined over the 5 years, and non-current liabilities stayed the same, while current liabilities stayed the same until the 5th year, where they increased. The income statement in the first of the 5 years, BP slowly declined into year 2, when its profits grew abundantly. Net income were at a low the 2nd year, where they skyrocketed. Expenses stayed stagnant all 5 years. The company is showing positive trends. Operating expenses significantly over the last 5 years increased, and selling and admin expenses decreased, and these things balance each other out. Kinder Morgan, their balance sheet, the first 3 years for non-current assets stayed the same until year 5, when it decreased. current assets also increased over 50% by year 5, which means they're profiting. Over the 5 years, equity stayed the same until year 5, where it was decreased, which means they were losing their long-term money. Non-current liabilities also decreased by 45% by year 5, and current liabilities increased over time. Revenues stayed stagnant until year 3, where positive trends started trending upwards. Expenses stayed the same practically all 5 years. The net income stayed stagnant until year 3, when it declined. Operating expenses and selling and admin expenses both increased and are equal in amount. And that is everything that I have on those companies. The income statement shows a company's financial performance over a period, focusing on the revenue and expenses that translate to net income, which is profit or net loss. This analyzation will not only shed light onto a company's current financial health, but also provide valuable pointers for the future performance. Furthermore, by comparing these findings in the industry benchmarks, we can assess a company's relative profitability within the company's landscape. And with the balance sheet analysis, it paints a picture of a company's financial position by considering these findings alongside other financial data and industry trends. And more comprehensive assessments of a company's prospect can be made. All this in conclusion, based on my analysis, BP appears to be a well-positioned player in the oil and gas industry with strong reserves, a healthy balance sheet, and a focus on cost efficiency. However, the future outlook remains uncertain due to the economy, as we are at an all-time high and people aren't making the money that they're supposed to. The future of the oil and gas industry is complex and uncertain, with several key factors shaping its trajectory. Energy transition. The global push for cleaner energy sources like renewable is putting pressure on the oil and gas industry demand, particularly in the power generation sector. This trend is expected to continue, potentially leading to a decline in overall consumption. Oil and gas prices are inherently volatile, influenced by factors like geopolitical tension, global economic conditions. This can create challenges for companies in the industry. Another issue would be technological advances. There are a lot of technological advances happening right now in the renewable gas. Carbon capture and hydrogen products could disrupt the industry. However, oil and gas companies can also leverage these advancements to improve efficiency and reduce emissions. So in the long run, it may still benefit them because they still work in the power sector. And another thing would be regulation. Increasing environmental regulations aimed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions could restrict oil and gas productions and explorations, which could cause a decline in some of the money that they're making or declining their assets. The oil and gas industry will likely face continued challenges due to energy transition and strict regulations. However, they will always remain a significant part of global energy mix for decades to come, especially in sectors like transportation and petrochemicals. Companies that can adapt to the changing landscape by investing in cleaner technology and embracing sustainability practices will be best positioned to thrive.